And now joining us out of New York for more on the story is Mr. Max Parry, investigative journalist. Hey there, Max. Hope you're doing well out there. Your JCPOA talks are now seem like they're endless, but how do you feel about them?
Well, obviously, the statements by the, Iranian and Russian envoys is encouraging, but it's very hard to be optimistic, to be perfectly honest with you, given the way that the Biden administration is, completely capitulating to the Zionists amid their genocidal assault, ongoing genocidal assault on the Palestinians. So while that's going on, it's really difficult to have, optimism that the administration is really committed to returning to the JCPOA. Even though he campaigned pledging that he was seeking to return to the agreement. And so, although there are indications from several sides that progress is being made, nevertheless, they're still at a stalemate because the U.S. is still refusing to lift the entirety of the maximum pressure sanctions that were placed illegally by the Trump administration. And, Iran has already proven in the past that if the sanctions are lifted, it's willing to scale back its nuclear program. And it only started enriching in uranium at 60% when the Trump administration unilaterally pulled out of the agreement. So you just have that's exactly waiting for here. If the U.S. really wants to revive the agreement, Iran has made it very clear that it has to lift all the sanctions imposed since 2018. And I would also point out, as your segment did, that time might be running out here, that the window of time might be closing as the elections in Iran approach next month, where in all likelihood, what they call a hardliner relative to the current administration might be assuming office. So, but all this just
Max,
goes to show that. Sure, go ahead.
I'm sorry, you mentioned what's taking place in Gaza. Do you somehow feel that the attacks on worshippers at the Al-Aqsa Mosque and then what would fall in Gaza now? Do you think somehow this is tied in to talks in Vienna to try to revive the JCPOA? We know staunch opponent of it is the Israeli regime.
Absolutely. I think that the Israelis are very, very desperate. They're increasingly isolated, and I think that they're very, very desperate. As they see the, especially with the public perception in the United States, seemingly turning against them. Even not just among the Democratic Party, where polls are showing that the approval of the Zionist regime is sliding downward. Even among young Republicans, the approval of Israel is starting to go down. So I think that they're very desperate, and they were, during the last several months of the Trump administration, they were constantly trying to undermine any détente or rapprochement between the U.S. and Iran. So I do think that it's related, although there are several other factors at play, obviously, why the Zionists are going full-fledged with their violence and ethnic cleansing of the Palestinians. But I do think that it's certainly a factor in, Iran is also a target of Tel Aviv at the end of the day. Definitely a factor, sure. I just fear that, Iran could be walking into a trap here, because we have to remember that Biden's Secretary of State has indicated several times that if the administration does re-enter the JCPOA, that they're going to, what he wants to extend it or strengthen a new version of the nuclear agreement, which of course would mean more concessions from Iran, even though they've had their scientists assassinated, their top military general obviously assassinated, and their nuclear facility last month in Natanz sabotaged. It's always Iran that has to make the first move. So I just hope that the Iranians and defend their right as a sovereign nation to have a nuclear program, which, even according to the International Atomic Energy Agency, is a peaceful one and does not have a military component. So I just hope that Blinken doesn't influence these negotiations to include additional earmarks or provisions regarding ballistic missiles, for example. I hope that, a re-entry into the JCPOA doesn't involve Iran having to make more concessions, because the ball is clearly in the U.S.'s court after it unilaterally withdrew from the agreement.
All right, thanks, Bud. Stay safe until we hear from you again from New York. You're there joining us.